The paper curled in the fire before anyone in the ballroom understood what they were looking at. Jason held the framed land deed above the silver flame bowl at the center of the stage, his jaw tight, his eyes shining with the kind of arrogance that only comes from a man who thinks he has already won. His mistress stood beside him in red silk, recording everything on her phone, smiling like this was entertainment. "This," Jason said, as the fire climbed across the edges of the document, "is the last proof that she ever belonged in my world." The room turned toward Ava. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She didn't beg him to stop. Because the second the frame cracked in Jason's hands, a small brass key slid free from the back panel, hit the marble floor, and spun once beneath the chandelier light. Jason saw it. Ava saw it too. And what that little key opened would destroy everything he had built on lies. Stay with this story, because it does not end where men like Jason think it will. The Abigail Foundation Gala had drawn 180 guests that evening to the Imperial Palm House on Victoria Island. Crystal chandeliers floated over black marble floors. Gold-rimmed glasses clinked beneath soft jazz. Women in sculpted gowns drifted between candlelit tables, while men in tailored suits shook hands like partnerships could be made from posture alone. It was one of Lagos's most visible charity nights of the year. The foundation had been created to fund creative schools for girls in low-income communities across West Africa. And this year's theme was Legacy and Land, a celebration of inheritance, ownership, and what families leave behind. At the center of the hall stood a curated display wall. Photographs, architectural drawings, a scale model of the first school campus. And mounted in a dark wooden frame beneath warm spotlighting, the original land deed gifted to Ava by her late father, the first legal paper that made the foundation possible. Most people saw it as a symbolic document. Ava knew better. That paper was history. That paper was blood. That paper was memory. And hidden inside the frame backing was the one thing Jason did not know existed. Ava arrived at the gala in an emerald gown that wrapped around her like discipline. No glitter, no excess, no noise. Her gold earrings had belonged to her mother. Her hair was sculpted back from her face with the kind of elegance that didn't ask for attention, but always received it. People greeted her warmly. She smiled, hugged, thanked, moved. She knew everyone in that room well enough to recognize who had built real things and who had only learned to look expensive while standing beside them. Jason arrived 35 minutes late. Not alone. Never discreetly. He entered with Sophia on his arm, her red gown tight, her lips dark, her phone already out, like she had come prepared to witness something historic. Not because she respected history, because she wanted to film humiliation. Jason moved through the room with loud confidence. He laughed too hard, spoke too close, held eye contact too long. The performance of power had become easier for him than power itself. When a banker near the champagne table asked where his wife had been all week, Jason smirked and said, "Busy acting like she still owns things." Sophia laughed before the man did. Ava heard it. She kept walking. Because some women answer insult with noise, and some women answer it with timing. 7 years before that gala, Ava Bennett worked out of a one-room architectural studio above a pharmacy in Surulere. She designed low-cost learning spaces for women's cooperatives, local libraries, and after-school art programs. Her office had peeling paint, 2 second-hand desks, one oscillating fan, and a wall full of pinned sketches done in charcoal and pencil. The money was never enough. The purpose always was. Her father had left her one gift when he died: 12 acres of inherited family land on the outskirts of Ibadan, plus every legal paper tied to it. He had told her before his final hospital stay, "Land is not just soil. It is memory that cannot be argued with." Ava kept the deed in a cloth folder under her drafting table. Jason came into her life wearing ambition like a tailored suit one size too large. Back then, he was charming in the way hungry men often are. Attentive, observant, eager, always asking questions that made women feel seen. He said he admired how Ava built things from almost nothing. He said her mind was rare. He said when he looked at her sketches, he felt like he was watching the future taking shape. Ava believed him. Why wouldn't she? He listened when she spoke of schools, of design, of legacy, of girls who never got to imagine themselves in spaces built for beauty instead of survival. They married 11 months later in a church courtyard lit with white flowers and brass lanterns. Her gele was simple. His vows were emotional. He cried while saying them. He held her hand as if he was terrified of ever losing it. And for a while, he meant it. Or maybe he meant the version of himself he became beside her. The first years felt honest. They planned late into the night. They ate suya in plastic chairs on their half-finished balcony and talked about building a foundation. They calculated budgets on the back of receipts. They dreamed in square footage and scholarship numbers. When Jason wanted to leave salary work and start a real estate advisory firm, Ava backed him. Not just emotionally, financially. She used income from her design contracts and leveraged the inherited land as collateral to help secure the capital and reputation he needed to sit at tables that had never opened for him before. The firm grew. Then the circles changed. And when a man's circles change faster than his character, the mask usually slips before the year ends. It began with his mother. Mama Diane had always been present, but softly. Holiday calls, Sunday opinions, measured criticism wrapped in polished tones. Then Jason's money started growing, and Mama Diane's visits became strategic. She sat at Ava's dining table drinking Zobo from Ava's glasses and spoke like she was reading a verdict. "You're talented," she'd say. "But men at Jason's level need a woman with social weight." Or, "These charity ideas are sweet, but soft women are useful only until real money arrives." Ava learned early that cruelty delivered with a smile becomes difficult to quote. After every visit, Jason changed a little more. He stayed out later. His phone turned face down. He started using words like leverage, optics, image, placement, relevance. Words that made relationships sound like branding exercises. Then Sophia appeared. First as a consultant, then as a frequent name. Then as a perfume trace on a collar Ava had ironed that morning. Sophia Collins was beautiful in the way cities reward. Polished, visible, socially fluent. She ran lifestyle campaigns, hosted luxury events, and knew how to stand close enough to powerful men without looking accidental. Ava noticed everything. A dinner receipt for two at a rooftop restaurant on the same night Jason claimed he had met investors. A bracelet charge she never received. A hotel booking confirmation sent to his assistant but somehow forwarded to the home printer by mistake. And one afternoon, while organizing folders in the study, Ava found the document that changed suspicion into architecture. It was a scanned transfer file, a newly formed holding entity, JH Legacy Properties, registered under Jason's initials. But the attached annexes carried references to the Ibadan land parcel, her father's land, the one tied to the Foundation's future site development. Ava sat down slowly. Her body did not shake. Her breathing did not break. She opened every file. And there it was. A private transfer plan. A staggered route to move beneficial control of the land-linked assets into a corporate shell. 2 signatures were listed, where there should have been 3. One of them was forged. The missing consent belonged to Ava, but the one who had witnessed the filing was not a stranger. It was Mama Diane's attorney. Then came the messages. Jason to Sophia, Sophia to Jason, Mama Diane to Jason. A triangle of contempt dressed as strategy. Sophia wrote, "She was useful when you needed credibility." Jason replied, "Not for much longer." Mama Diane wrote, "Once the gala announces the new board structure, it will be too late for her to claim anything." Ava read every word, screenshotted every page, forwarded each file to a new secure account. Then she closed the laptop, turned off the study light, and went to bed beside the man who had spent months trying to make her invisible inside her own life. She lay there in silence, not powerless, just finished believing him. 3 days later, Ava met with her oldest friend Emily, now a property litigator with a calm voice and a courtroom mind. They met in a quiet cafe in Yaba, far from the circles Jason moved in. Emily read everything without interrupting. When she was done, she placed the phone flat on the table and said, "This isn't just infidelity. This is asset concealment, forged transfer intent, and attempted dispossession." Ava's eyes didn't leave hers. "Can it be undone?" Emily nodded once. "Yes, but not by emotion, by evidence." That became the plan. For the next 9 weeks, Ava moved through her life like a woman watering plants in a house she had already decided to leave spiritually, even if not yet physically. She taught workshops, attended foundation meetings, smiled at people who had no idea what sat beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Emily assembled the legal backbone. A forensic accountant traced diverted funds. A registry officer confirmed irregular filing behavior. An independent handwriting specialist flagged signature mismatch patterns. And Ava herself created the part no court could ignore: the narrative chain. She printed bank extracts, archived text messages, captured photos from Sophia's public accounts, saved voice notes, logged dates, cross-referenced dinners, transfers, board discussions, and internal memos. Every lie had a timestamp. Every theft left a shape. One evening, Ava drove to an old frame restorer in Ebute Metta, a man named Mr. Walter who had repaired family portraits for 30 years and asked very few questions. She placed her father's framed land deed on his table. "I need a hidden cavity built into the backing," she said. He looked at her over his glasses. "For what?" "A key." He paused, then nodded. By the time he finished, the back panel of the frame contained a concealed slot large enough to hold a brass key tied to a velvet string. That key opened the original wall safe in the gala venue's legacy room, a safe the event organizers had allowed Ava to use for storing archival documents and donor papers because she chaired the exhibition committee. Inside that safe, on the night of the gala, would sit certified originals, sworn affidavits, forensic summaries, and a sealed injunction packet already prepared by Emily. Ava hid the key inside the frame. Not permanently. Just enough that if the frame were broken by force, the key would fall free. Then she waited. Because arrogance is most useful when you stop interrupting it. As the gala approached, Jason became careless in direct proportion to his confidence. He brought Sophia to brunches where Ava's colleagues sat 3 tables away. He introduced her as creative strategy to people who had eyes. Mama Diane began making comments in public now, no longer satisfied with private poison. At one planning luncheon, she smiled at Ava and said, "Some women start foundations. Other women know how to sustain the men who fund them." Sophia posted from Jason's car one Saturday night. His watch was visible on the steering wheel. Her caption read, "Some doors open only when the old ones close." Ava took the screenshot and added it to the file. Then came the board announcement draft. Jason had positioned himself to unveil a new governance structure at the gala, one that would effectively reduce Ava's authority over the foundation she built while presenting it as modernization. It was elegant theft. Not loud. Not criminal-looking on the surface. Just enough legal fog to make resistance look emotional. He expected Ava to protest privately. Cry, perhaps. Negotiate. Ask for fairness from people who had already priced her out of the room in their minds. But by then, Ava was no longer living inside his expectations. She had moved past heartbreak and entered clarity. The most dangerous woman in a collapsing marriage is not the loud one. It is the one who has already finished collecting evidence. The week before the gala, Ava visited the venue for final inspection. The legacy wall was perfect. The deed hung beneath amber light. The safe in the adjoining room worked smoothly. She turned the brass key once, listened to the clean mechanical click, and smiled. Not with joy, but with precision. Everything was in place. That same night, Jason sat across from her at dinner, loosened his cufflinks, and said, "After this gala, you should step back gracefully. It will be less embarrassing." He said it casually, like weather, like policy, like her entire life's work had become a scheduling inconvenience. Ava folded her napkin, set it beside her plate, and looked at him for a long second. Not with anger, not with tears, with the calm disbelief of someone staring at a bridge that doesn't know it has already lost its foundation. Then she stood up and left the table. He mistook her silence for surrender. That was his final mistake. On the night of the gala, the room was full by 8:30. Donors, clergy, developers, artists, women who had funded girls' coding labs, men who had built schools and wanted their names remembered for it. The jazz quartet softened the air. Camera flashes surfaced and disappeared. Waiters moved in practiced lines. Ava greeted each guest with poise sharp enough to cut cloth. People noticed something different in her, though few could name it. She looked too steady, too composed, too complete. Not like a woman on the edge of public humiliation. Like a woman who had already survived it privately and come dressed for the funeral of someone else's illusion. Mama Diane arrived in black lace and pearls, posture rigid, mouth already prepared for contempt. She approached Ava near the exhibition wall and said, "You still have time to leave tonight with dignity." Ava turned toward her and replied, "I didn't come here for dignity. I came here for truth." Something small moved in Mama Diane's face then. A warning. A flicker. The body often understands danger before pride allows the mind to admit it. At 9:10, Jason stood to speak. Sophia was beside him. Phone ready. Smile ready. Ego ready. He thanked sponsors, praised innovation, spoke about scaling impact, then shifted into a tone of theatrical sincerity. As institutions grow, he said, they sometimes outgrow sentimental attachments. The room quieted. He gestured toward the legacy wall. To move forward, we must release the past. Then he walked directly to Ava's father's framed deed. He lifted it off the wall. Several people frowned, uncertain if this was planned. It was not. He carried the frame to the decorative silver flame bowl placed near the stage floral arrangement and held it up before the room. Some people confuse inheritance with entitlement, he said. Sophia zoomed in with her camera. Jason looked straight at Ava. You own nothing here. Then he slammed the lower edge of the frame against the marble pedestal. The glass shattered. A gasp cut through the hall. He tore the paper backing, yanked the deed partly loose, and pushed the corner of it into the ceremonial flame. Fire ran across the old paper in bright orange veins. Sophia laughed softly. Guests froze. A donor near the front stood halfway out of her chair. Someone whispered, "My God." And then the brass key dropped out from the broken backing and struck the floor. One clean metallic sound. Small, sharp, final. Jason's face changed. Only slightly, but enough. Ava stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatically. She bent, picked up the key, and looked at it in her palm, like she had been expecting an old friend. Then she lifted her eyes to Jason, and for the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Ava did not argue with him. She did not snatch the burning paper from his hand. She turned away from him completely and walked toward the adjoining legacy room. People parted for her without being asked. The entire ballroom moved in silence behind her. At the far wall stood a recessed safe hidden behind carved wood paneling. Very few guests even knew it existed. Ava inserted the brass key, turned it once, then twice. The lock released with a mechanical click that sounded louder than applause. She opened the safe door. Inside sat 4 sealed files, 1 flash drive, and a leather folder stamped with legal certification tabs. Emily stepped out from the side corridor at that exact moment, dressed in navy, carrying herself with the calm of a woman who already knew how the next 10 minutes would end. Ava took the top file and returned to the center of the room. Jason still stood beside the silver bowl, the half-burned deed in one hand. Sophia suddenly no longer smiling quite as fully as before. Ava faced the microphone. Her voice, when it came, was quiet enough to force everyone to listen. "The frame my husband just destroyed," she said, "contained a key to the safe holding the original records he hoped I would never present in public." No one moved. This first file contains certified proof that the land used to secure the early assets behind his company and this foundation's expansion was inherited through my father's estate and never lawfully transferred out of my beneficial control. Murmurs. Soft. Spreading. Ava opened the second file. This one contains transfer drafts submitted with an unauthorized signature pattern and incomplete consent chain. Emily stepped forward. "For clarity," she said, voice crisp, "the attempted restructuring tied to JH Legacy Properties is now subject to injunctive action for fraud, concealment, and attempted unlawful dispossession. Jason finally found his voice. "This is absurd." But his voice cracked on the last word. Ava continued as if he had coughed. "The third file contains message records between Jason, Sophia Collins, and his mother, discussing how tonight's board announcement would remove me from authority after the assets were shielded behind a controlled entity." Sophia lowered the phone. Not fully, just enough. Ava looked at her. "Sophia, the bracelet on your wrist was purchased the same week donors were told we needed to delay classroom construction due to funding strain. The invoice is in this file." Sophia's free hand moved to the bracelet instinctively. That tiny movement told the room more than denial could have. Ava opened the leather folder last. "This contains the forensic accounting summary and the court-ready petition package already lodged for emergency review." The ballroom had become so still that even the jazz players near the back sat motionless, with their instruments resting in their laps. Then Ava turned to Mama Diane. "And this," she said softly, lifting one printed page, "contains the message where you wrote, 'Once she is replaced publicly, the rest will feel natural.'" A woman at table 6 covered her mouth. One of the trustees looked down as if the marble floor had suddenly become more interesting than shame. Jason stepped forward. "Ava." "No," she said. Not loud, but complete. He stopped. Because men like Jason spend years believing volume is power, until one woman says one clean word and takes the room from them forever. Emily addressed the guests. "Copies of the legal notice will be delivered to the board before midnight. Any governance action announced tonight under the proposed restructuring is void pending review. The relevant asset controls have already been frozen." The effect of that sentence was immediate. Not dramatic in sound, dramatic in consequence. People looked at Jason differently now. Not with admiration, with calculation, with distance. With the cold social instinct of those who know when a man has become professionally contagious. Jason glanced at Sophia. Sophia did not look back. Mama Diane's pearls rose and fell with shallow breathing. And Ava, the woman he had intended to erase publicly, stood under chandelier light holding truth so steadily it looked effortless. The first video clips reached private WhatsApp groups before the dessert course was served. By dawn, 3 angles of the gala had circulated across business circles, church networks, donor chats, and society blogs. One showed Jason burning the deed. One showed the key falling. One showed Ava opening the safe. No narrative team can outwork that sequence. His investors pulled back first. A land syndicate paused contract discussions. 2 clients suspended advisory mandates. An email from a major partner arrived the following afternoon with only one sentence. "We are no longer comfortable proceeding under current integrity concerns." Comfort. It is amazing how quickly that word changes owners. Mama Diane's Church Women's Council removed her quietly but completely. No scandalous announcement. Just a carefully worded letter thanking her for years of service before informing her that leadership was moving in a new direction. She did not attend service the next 2 Sundays. No one saved her seat. Sophia vanished online, the way people do when they discover visibility can reverse direction. Her public photos disappeared. Her account turned private, then blank, then gone. 3 days later, the bracelet arrived at Jason's apartment by courier in a small white box. No note, no apology, no claim, just distance. Jason called Ava repeatedly, at first with anger, then explanation, then regret, then that weak, late-stage tone men use when consequences arrive faster than language. She answered none of them, because once a woman has had to prove her humanity in a room full of witnesses, she owes no private softness to the man who staged the spectacle. The forensic report finalized 5 weeks later. Misappropriated flows, undisclosed holdings, improper transfer attempts, conflict-linked expenditure. Every thread led back to the same small circle of greed. The court restored control over the land-linked asset base. The contested restructuring collapsed. Jason's leverage evaporated. By the time the final review concluded, his firm had shrunk, his reputation had cracked, and the partnerships he once entered by charm now closed before he reached the lobby. He came to the old house once, sat outside in his car with the engine running, looked at the gate for 40 minutes, never went in. The guard had already been instructed not to open it. There are some doors money cannot reopen once a woman has renamed the house in her spirit. 6 months later, on a bright Saturday morning, Ava stood on the completed grounds of the first Abigail Creative School. The building rose from red earth and white stone, designed with wide windows, shaded courtyards, open-air reading corners, and a studio wing where girls painted walls with stories they had never before been invited to imagine. The air smelled of rain and clay. Children ran across the courtyard in clean uniforms. Someone tested a piano inside the assembly room. The sound drifted out through the open doors like a future refusing to whisper. Ava wore a plain white blouse, dark trousers, and dust on her palms from helping arrange planters near the entry path. No ballroom, no diamonds, no performance, just work that had survived betrayal. A framed photograph from the opening ceremony would later sit in her office, not of her wedding, not of the gala, not of fire, but of her cutting a ribbon with schoolgirls at her side, smiling with the kind of freedom that no courtroom grants and no husband can revoke. Emily joined her on the walkway with 2 cups of coffee. "You built it," she said. Ava looked across the courtyard. "No," she replied. "I finished building it." That afternoon, her phone lit once with an unknown number. A message. 3 words. "Can we talk?" She looked at the screen for a long second, not because she was tempted, but because closure sometimes arrives in the form of a sentence you no longer need answered. Then she set the phone face down on the desk, beside a set of fresh campus plans, and returned to the classroom wing where a group of girls were arguing over paint colors for a mural. Outside, the wind moved through young trees planted along the boundary wall. Inside, the future sounded like laughter. Some men believe destroying a woman publicly will make her smaller. What they never understand is this: if she built herself before him, she can rebuild beyond him. And when truth finally opens the wall safe they buried behind image, status, marriage, and fear, it is never the woman who burns. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. What is built with dignity outlives what was stolen through pride.